dissent.
Well, no government really does. Even though they might say you have freedom of speech, no government really wants there to be uprisings and overthrowing the government. And the government in the Ukraine, when protesters were protesting there, sent, the jackbooted thugs out there because there were fires going on. Imagine fires raging in the Capitol in Washington, D.C., and protesters. What do you think the government would do if they were burning buildings and cars and things like that and saying, we want to overthrow the government? Well, how do you think the government here in America would respond? Of course, they would send out the troops. Of course, if people responded violently back, there would be bullets flying and people would end up dead, just like in Kiev. It'd be the same exact scenario. But now we've turned and say, hey, look at that. They're murdering their own people. They're horrible. We have to take that government and we have to arrest these people and put them on trial for the crimes against the protesters. And we see a turnover in the government there. And we know why. We spent $20 million supporting those protesters, the subversives in Kiev, with U.S. dollars, $20 million supporting them, organizing them to have this uprising in the Ukraine. So they would change their alliance from Russia to the West, to America, to the EU. And that's exactly what it worked. The plan worked, didn't it? The president has left. We don't know where he is, the president of the Ukraine. The parliament took over and they said, hey, we're now going to be aligned with the West. And Russia is responding saying, hey, not so fast. We know what's going on here. We know what you're up to, America.
Propaganda,
the American government. And now they've sent in troops to the remaining ally there in Crimea because they were asked to be there by the Crimean leader. And now we are condemning it. And things are getting hot under the collar over there.
Mm-hmm.
We are heading, it's clear we're heading towards a new Cold War.
Jeff, I've used this term before when it came to the Middle East, but now we could switch it to the Ukraine. Powder keg.
Yes.
We're on the precipice of some shit blowing up really bad over there. And you had mentioned it before. Are we going back into a Cold War thing with Russia? Is this how it's going to be? We're going to spend billions of dollars, engaging in spying on each other again and having this.
Well, we already are spying, but is it going to get heated? More heated? Let's see. The Russian leaders in the Kremlin told Putin, let's recall our ambassador from America.
Mm-hmm.
There is a Russian warship down in Cuba just visiting their allies in Cuba. Well, what's a warship doing there? Things are heating up.
Interesting.
Yeah, oh yeah. Things are big. And here we have Obama, who is supposed to be a Nobel Peace Prize winner. Right? Am I right?
Yeah.
And things are getting out of control with Russia. What road are we going down?
We love sticking our hands in so many pies. Isn't it bad enough we're kind of spread thin all over the planet militarily? But now we're just...
Yeah. There's already discussions. I heard one analyst, Pentagon analyst, saying they're already having discussions how we would get troops into the Ukraine. How we ammunition and supplies to maintain those U.S. troops in the Ukraine. Because if Crimea asked for Russian troops and they're there showing a show of power, we've got to somehow show a show of power since, the protesters took over there and we won't allow them. Why are we making this such a big deal? How many Americans, raise your hand, really care if the Ukraine is allied with us or Russia? I don't care. Their long-standing history has been allies with Russia. Doesn't bother me a bit. But it means a lot to Russia. Because it's creeping. NATO power and influence in the West creeping right to their border. And I could understand, and we would understand, how that would make us feel very uncomfortable. if Russian influence was creeping, say, through our borders, through Canada or Mexico. We were losing alliances with our neighbors. Well, why doesn't Russia just become part of NATO? Because that's not how it's going to ever happen.
No.
They would, that for them, from their perspective, that would be kowtowing to America and becoming one of their subjects.
Weren't they part of the? Is the Warsaw Pact still in place, or did they dissolve that?
No. USSR is gone, but they still had their alliances with countries that are neighboring around them.
Yeah.
So we don't know how this is going to actually turn out, but it is heating up. And interesting enough, we have the video up there on the website this week. Obama was talking at some Democrat National Committee in Washington, and some guy snuck in. He was in the back, and he yelled out in the middle of it, and Obama's talking about Republicans. Well, we just have a different view on things. I know they are patriotic Americans, too. We just happen to have a, same old garbage. And the guy yelled from the back of the room. He says, why don't you tell us about your plan for nuclear war with Russia? And he just kind of stopped in his tracks. And he says, what? Like, what are you saying?
Well, what you talking about, Willis?
He says, who is that in the back? And he says, I don't know anything about that plan.
Yeah.
Started to try to laugh it off. And then he made further jokes about the guy saying, oh, I think he thinks happy hour started early today. Turned it into a joke. But, folks, weird things happen over conflicts like this. And this isn't a little thing to Russia. This is everything to them. This is an all or nothing situation to them. This is one we should be in the streets saying we don't want to go to war over the Ukraine. We don't want to spend any money over the Ukraine. We don't want to send any weapons to the Ukraine. It's none of our business. And there is no national interest in the Ukraine for America. None. Zero. Zip. We can't let the war hawks like little Johnny McCain push the agenda here. And Obama have to show what a strong leader he is by doing something stupid.
We can't afford this.